This original Audi Q8 from 1930 was standing on the outskirts of a small village for almost 30 years. Its condition was catastrophic for several reasons. The body became synonymous with the corrosion. Only a faint memory remained of the paint and optics, and the missing glass allowed birds and rodents to settle in the cabin. The author of the project decided to give the car a second life. The first thing he did was to clean the cabin from the broken glass, large dirt and straw fragments right on the spot. Then he dismantled some elements of the interior and exterior, removed the doors, hood, optics, steering wheel, dashboard, central tunnel, torpedo and some units under it, seats, etc. In the cabin, some parts had to be literally chopped off with an axe by the restorer over the years of inactivity. They literally fused with other parts under the influence of the environment. It is worth mentioning separately about the engine compartment. Initially it was a solid grey silver formation. It covered all the units, and in this oasis of living nature a snake settled. But apparently she did not survive the tragedy that happened to the car and went to the other world right next to the engine. The tragedy did not stop the hero in his intention to resuscitate the car, so he began with double energy to knock out all the nodes and units. This was the only way to remove a layer of soil that had merged with the metal and plastic at the molecular level. The work went fast because breaking is much easier than building. The author quickly removed the battery from the time of stagnation, the remains of headlights, grille and booth radiators, main and air conditioner. At the same time he disconnected all hose, corrugation and wire plugs. Then he extracted the engine with a winch and loaded it onto a trolley. In this state the car's skeleton and power unit got into the workshop where global change began. When a lover of restoring rusty cars first looked closely at the engine separately from the car, he was pleasantly surprised. The engine looked quite decent despite its long inactivity. Immediately came to mind a saying of older generation who at any convenient opportunity claimed that everything used to be done much better. But the engine needed an overhaul. So the hero began systematically disassembling units and removing attachments. He removed the injection system, manifold, generator and starter, roller and belt. The latter was in good condition and could really last for another 1000 kilometers. One of the rollers had a bolt under an internal hexagon. Its edges were wiped off, so to extract it he had to wield something like a pin. Then the process went faster. He removed the valve timing mechanism with all its components, power, steering and pump, thermostat and spark plugs. He removed the valve cover with some trepidation. After all, the car had been idle for so long and there must have been certain reason for that, but there was not even a hint of rust under it. After removing the cylinder head, crankshaft, pistols and valves, the restorer quickly reached the crankshaft. He dismantled the cover and insert of the main bearing, oil pickup with filter, etc. He soaked all parts in diesel fuel and then wiped them with a regular paintbrush. By the way, later on he painted block in swamp green color. All parts of engine remained native. Their condition did not raise any question, and there was no desire to look of new or used ones. The offer simply refused from gaskets, believing in two internal factors, maybe an impeccable German quality, and they did not fail. To ensemble engine required to perform all operation in reserve order. Everything worked out and it was time to move on to the next level to restoration. On front right doors there were two holes. He welded them with steel rod and closed largest hole with plate. Then he disassembled the entire structure of the lifting mechanism and removed the frame. He smoothed out minor irregularities with a universe tool. A hammer. He cleaned, primed and plastered the metal from the outside. There was a lot of putty left from the previous project, so there was no need to save it. The layer turned out to be decent, but the door was almost indistinguishable from a new one in terms of the smoothness. Next, the homegrown Kulibin sequentially sorted out, sanded, primed and plastered the rest of the elements. These are doors, trunk lid, hood and roof. He also worked on doorways and seals. After completing this stage, it was possible to move on to painting work. The color was close and light pink. Yes, it is not classic at all, but with such a color the car looked very unusual. After painting, all parts were covered with varnish. Then the master installed headlights, emblem and other small parts. It was mentioned above about the absence of front and rear windows. They turned out to be extremely difficult to find. Also, in the end, it worked out. On the side of used parts there were original glasses, which were immediately purchased and glued on sealant. The result was very pleasing. The car noticeable transformer. It remained to bring the interior into proper shape. It had to be tormented. Fortunately, the seats were completely covered with leather, so the author washed them relatively quickly. Clearing the floor, door cars, ceiling and numerous small parts took him much more time. Then there were final twerks of what had to be ripped apart during dismantling. At the end of restored once again washed everything well with water. It turned out the interior was almost not damaged. Even after 3 decades under rain and scorching sun, it could give a head start to any Lada's interior. Plastic had a black shade and after light detailing, it solidly showed. The final coat was painting discs in noble black color. The author had previously sanded the other sides, applied primer and paint. Everything turned off predictably well. Heap of different tires, native ones came into disrepair. Black tires and dark casting completed each other perfect. Black on pink, a glamorous combination that is impossible to remain indifferent to. As a result, after a complex of work from rusty and attractive sedan turned into a petty car that attracts numerous looks. Most parts remained native, some minor things were changed, but 85% of car retained its native components. Test drive showed that Audi handles well and has decent dynamics. Of course, its condition is far from ideal, but goal of project was exactly such a general restoration. Thanks for watching and also for the likes and subscriptions to the channel. See you soon.